The legendary Mike Holmgren is predicting a big move that your Seattle Seahawks will make in regards to quarterback Geno Smith. We'll tell you what that is and react to it coming up in just a matter of moments here on this edition of Seattle Seahawks Today, powered by Chat Sports. Tyler Jones here with you. Thanks for joining us. Before we go any further in today's show, Mike Holmgren would want you to subscribe to Seahawks Today if you haven't done so already. Mike Holmgren, he beat the Niners a lot. We want to beat them too, not just on the football field, but off the football field in our sub-battle this week. We're sitting pretty at a nice number of 69 new subscribers this week. We got work to do, though. We want to run up the score a bit. Let's stick it to the Niners fans and win this sub-battle this week. For the latest happenings at your Seattle Seahawks all year long, you got to subscribe to the channel. Let's take it to the Niners. Do it for Mike Holmgren. Subscribe now, and we'll get started with today's show. Mike Holmgren with a local radio interview that he did this past week talked about the future for Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks at the quarterback position, and he is predicting that Geno will get an extension. He said this on 93.3 KJR radio this week. I think they're going to try to sign him to another contract. I'll be honest, this is not the news I wanted to hear by any stretch of the imagination. But, hey, if Mike Holmgren is going to say it, we're certainly going to listen. And he gets our full attention and our full respect for sure, and he's earned that right. But I understand the idea of keeping Geno with him on his current contract. That makes sense. And playing that contract out. What I don't understand is the idea of keeping him long-term and giving him another deal beyond the current contract he's on right now. You look at his current deal. It's not bad, right? 3 years, $75 million. He's in year 2 of that at the moment. That's a deal that works pretty well for the Seahawks and their situation they're in. Geno's been pushing for a contract extension. And we'll show you what he had to say a while back on that. But one big reason why Geno would like to have this figured out and get that extension is because he has no guaranteed money as of right now after 2024. And at the moment, we mentioned how friendly this deal is for the Seahawks. Geno is just the 20th highest paid quarterback in the National Football League. And you guys all know really well that quarterbacks are not cheap these days, and to be 20th for not having a rookie quarterback or a young quarterback, you can live with. You can work with that. But then you start to break things down for the future, and this is where it starts to get a little costly. Next year, Geno's got a cap hit of about $38.5 million, and that's just based on the current contract he's on, not based on any potential extension or anything like that. So that alone starts to get a little pricey when you factor that in at $38.5 million. He requested an extension last offseason, ultimately did not get that extension. John Schneider said that they weren't interested in going that route just yet, that they can have that discussion down the road, but they did not feel like it was appropriate to get something done this past offseason. Geno admitted as much that he was asking for an extension. He said, that's just normal business. Nothing wrong with that. And he has every right to ask. I don't blame him for at least trying. When I look at this, folks, Geno is on a team-friendly contract right now. But the production that we've seen, particularly this season in 2024, I don't think that merits awarding him another contract. Geno, I think, has done a really good job for Seattle of the circumstance that they were in moving on from Russell Wilson and trading him and not having to pay Russell all that money that he was wanting that he ultimately got from the Denver Broncos. The plan has always been that Geno would be a stopgap quarterback, a bridge quarterback, and would just get them by, just kind of buy them time until they found their young franchise quarterback. And if you start to think that Geno's that long-term plan, folks, beyond this current contract, it is not going to be cheap. You're not going to get him on the deal that he's currently on. Not even close. His current extension projection at the moment is around 3 years, $156 million. So you go from his current deal of 3 years, 75 to 3 years, 156. That's about $52 million per year. Folks, it's a no. No, thank you. I am not, no way in hell, extending Geno to be around here longer and paying him $52 million. Now, I'm not saying Mike Holmgren's wrong. They very well could do this. But this is not something I would advise. So respect to Mike Holmgren. All due respect. We're not bashing him whatsoever. We're not even saying he's wrong. He's just saying that he thinks this is going to happen. I'm sitting here saying I hope it doesn't. Should the Seahawks extend Geno Smith right now? Type HY for hell yes, HN for hell no. What do you think? Weigh in the comment section. Tell us what you think on our pinned comment today. You might get an ad break while the ad's playing. Get your votes in and let us know. So you start to break down the numbers a little bit further. And the Seahawks cap space next year, with Geno included, they are over the cap at the moment at $1.87 million. Obviously, they're going to clear out some cap space when they move on from Draymond Jones and a couple other players, and they're going to need to free up money just to sign their draft picks anyway. But then you get to 2026, and that's when they start to find their Dave Ramsey financial freedom, as the cap will open up to $170 million. And that's just based on a projection. We don't know what the exact cap number is going to be in 2026, but that's at least what we can base off the numbers that we're looking at right now anyway, what we think it will likely be. But that's not a guarantee. And you think about this. Geno's had a down year. He's taken a step back from what he was the previous 2 seasons, and he's 34 years of age right now. All right? So you play out next year on the current contract, and then you add 3 more years after that. You're looking at him being what? Quick math, 38, 39 years old. That's not great. I mean, even Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the most talented quarterbacks of all time, isn't doing so hot at 40 years old right now, folks. In a perfect world, I think what the Seahawks should do is keep Geno, bring him back on his current deal of where he's at right now, and hope that you find a young franchise quarterback in this year's draft to eventually be the full-time starter and replace Geno in 2026. The formula we've seen time and time again. The best way to bring in these young quarterbacks is to sit them for a year behind a veteran, like Patrick Mahomes did behind Alex Smith, like Aaron Rodgers did behind Brett Favre, like Tom Brady did behind Drew Bledsoe, Brock Purdy behind Jimmy Garoppolo. That is the proven formula, the proven recipe for success. I'm not opposed at all to bringing back Geno next year on the current deal and then have his next quarterback replace him the year following. That should be the plan of action if you're the Seattle Seahawks, not extending Geno and keeping him till he's old enough to apply for Social Security. All right? You look at Geno's resume, and we're not ungrateful. Don't get me wrong here, folks. I am very fortunate. I feel like we're all lucky that this played out the way it did. He surpassed expectations of when he took over for Russell Wilson as the full-time starter, going to back-to-back Pro Bowls, taking the Seahawks to the playoffs, winning comeback player of the year, leading the league in completion percentage. All of those are good things. That doesn't take away from what Geno has done. But this is a results-based business, folks. And a 22-29 record, including the postseason, and not getting this team over the hump, not taking that next step, is just simply not enough. And I know people are going to point to the offensive line and all that. And believe me, it's a very real reality that the offensive line has been atrocious. But that doesn't dismiss what we've seen from Geno Smith when you look at the numbers here. 11 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He's already passed up last year's interception total. He's on pace to throw the most interceptions he's thrown since becoming the Seahawks full-time starter at this rate in the season. 2,500 yards, 11 touchdowns. I just haven't seen enough that says, yes, I need to commit to Geno long term, and I need to have him play with this organization, pay him $150 million to be here till his late 30s. And here's the other thing, where I sit here, and it's hard for me to imagine Geno from his vantage point. Remember, in this negotiation process, all the leverage is in Seattle's corner here. It's Geno that has to prove himself. It's Geno that has to be the one that makes it worthwhile for Seattle to pay him. All the cards are in Seattle's favor. If you're Geno, I don't think you have much leverage. If you lose to the San Francisco 49ers this week and you go back to the negotiating table and say, I got an 0-5 record in my career against San Francisco, that isn't going to bode well for a guy wanting $52+ million. I think that's, if you're John Schneider, if you want to point to one thing, why you're not going to extend Geno, why you're not going to give him that money, where's the results, Geno? They're not there. That's the truth of the matter, folks. Now, maybe Geno wins this week, and they have a fantastic second half of the season, and then he says, look at me now, pay me. Things could change, but at the moment, all the leverage belongs to the Seahawks. Will Geno Smith be the Seahawks starting quarterback in 2026? That's the timeline we're looking at right now, folks. Weigh in, let us know why for yes, in for no. One guy that I promise you will be around in 2026 is Byron Murphy. His jerseys are on sale now at chatsports.com/Murphy. Got the home jersey, the road jersey, the throwback uniform, men's and women's options for you. Free shipping available. Makes for a great present for the holidays as well. Go see for yourself. Chatsports.com/Murphy. The link is in the comments and the description of today's video. That's chatsports.com/Murphy. So, when we talk about planning for the quarterback for the future, the Seahawks aren't in a great spot right now to draft said quarterback for the future just yet. Their current draft position is 15th. And if you recall, going back to last year's draft, all the quarterbacks were gone before the Seahawks picked at 16th overall. And John Schneider wasn't surprised by that. There was quarterbacks he liked. He was a fan of J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix and among others. But he himself said, we knew they weren't going to be around when we picked at 16. So if you're Seattle, if you're at the moment going to find your quarterback of the future, they might not be there at 15. You might have to trade up and be aggressive and make a move. When you look at some of the top quarterbacks in next year's draft, Cam Ward has been fantastic. He's my favorite quarterback in this year's draft. Shedeur Sanders has been phenomenal with Colorado. I think that team is way overachieved. I have some character concerns about Shedeur Sanders, of what he said about his teammates, how he's carried himself. He's got a ginormous ego. I mean, you look at his father, it adds up. But one thing about Shedeur is they compare him to Geno Smith. Do you want to draft the second version of Geno? Maybe not. The other guys, Quinn Ewers. Quinn's had some health issues. He struggled to stay consistent. Jalen Milroe, incredible athlete, great runner. He's got some work to do as a passer. And Carson Beck was thought to be entering 2024 as the number one quarterback this year. The idea was that the Georgia Bulldogs were the favorites to win the national championship. Carson Beck was one of the favorites to win the Heisman, be the number one pick, and he has way underperformed. His stock may have already fallen to the third or fourth round, but there's plenty of time for Georgia to still turn this thing around. He can still get Georgia into the playoff and turn himself into a first-round pick, but he's got work to do when it comes to those quarterbacks. For me, of that group right now, I like Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders the most of those guys. And if you're the Seattle Seahawks and you're preparing for your future, I would be aggressive this draft and try to do what I can to move up and go get Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders and sit them behind Geno for a year and then take over from there. I think that's your best point of action. It's not extending Geno Smith. It's bringing him back for one more, play on the current contract, and groom your young quarterback going forward from there. Who is a quarterback the Seahawks should draft in 2025? Who comes to mind? Who would you like to see Seattle snag up? Well, in the comment section, let us know what you think. For continuing Seahawks coverage, subscribe now to Seahawks Today. I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.